Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to WrestleRant. I am Graham Juice Matthews, and for the entire summer of 2015, we're breaking down every installment of SummerSlam as seen on the WWE Network. Already up here on the channel are my reviews of SummerSlam 1988 from last year, 89 from last Tuesday, as well as 2002, 2008, 2011, and 2013 from last year as well. Every other installment I did not name will be up here on the channel from now until SummerSlam weekend in 2 months. Cannot wait for it. It's going to be great. But kicking off this show, SummerSlam 1990, was tag team action, Power and Glory taking on the Rockers. And although the match lasted 6 minutes, it did not feel that way at all. This was a glorified squash match, Power and Glory just decimating the Rockers. The match felt like it lasted only 2 minutes. Power and Glory attacked the Rockers from behind as they were making their way to the ring, dominated for them for most of the matchup, and ended up emerging victorious. So a very weird way of kicking off the show. I would have been fine with this match a little bit later on in the card, but as an opener, it really wasn't exciting at all. Like I said, it was pretty much a squash match, and that was it. It was kind of a very odd way to open the show, and you would think that, like I said, they would have an exciting opener, a title match, or even what we got next would have been better suited as an opener, but it was what it was. It wasn't the worst thing in the world. I just thought it was rather strange. Up next, the Intercontinental Championship, the Texas Tornado, aka formerly known as Kerry Von Erich in WCCW and other territories, contending for the gold, the Intercontinental Championship against Mr. Perfect in a good match. And although, this was kind of the theme throughout the night, I wish this match went longer. You put one of the best guys in wrestling history, one of the best wrestlers in WCCW history, one of the brightest stars on the territories, on the independent scene, whatever you want to call it, not the independent scene, but in the territories during his time. Kerry Von Erich against one of the greatest, mat wrestlers, one of the greatest technical wrestlers, in my opinion, in WWE history, at least during this time period, during this era, and Mr. Perfect. You're going to have this great matchup. And they only scratch the surface in terms of what they could do. The Texas Tornado was a last-minute replacement for Brutus Beefcake on this show. I don't know why he didn't show up. Maybe he had some prior commitments. I don't know what happened, but Texas Tornado took his place, contended for the gold, and won the championship. So I don't know if the original plan was to give the title to Brutus Beefcake. Maybe it was. I'm glad it was the Texas Tornado. He was a much better fit for that championship anyway. I've never been a huge Brutus Beefcake fan. I've made that very clear in the past. I think the guy's overrated. He's good. He's an entertaining act, but being in the main event of SummerSlam 89, the gimmick, the barber stuff, it wasn't main event material. It wasn't even mid-card material, in my opinion. I thought the Texas Tornado was a perfect fit for the Intercontinental Championship. And a lot of, corny one-liners like there's an F5 coming through, there's a storm warning coming through, I'm the Texas Tornado. Now, the little cliche lines, but that was WWE for you back in the late 80s, early 90s. It kind of came with the territory, no pun intended. That was just kind of part of the culture in WWE at that period in time. But you don't need me to tell you that. But other than that, though, I thought it was a good match. But again, I was disappointed it didn't go longer. It had the big win. The crowd popped big for the title change. It was a shocker. No one saw it coming. Kerry Von Erich had just debuted in WWF about a month or two before this, so he was fresh off his arrival, won title gold, had a very bright future in WWE, and ultimately they never ended up doing anything with him. I know he committed suicide, unfortunately, about 3 years later, but his run in WWE, I don't know if I would call it disappointing, and maybe a lot of people would, but it just didn't live up to what he could possibly do. To his full potential, he did not live up to during his time in WWE from 90, and maybe, I think he only lasted about a year or so in 91, maybe 92. I believe he left in 91, but, still, it was a great start to his WWE run, but I wish they kind of did more with him beyond that point. Up next, we had Queen Sensational Sherri taking on Sapphire. This was during the time that right after WrestleMania when we had Sensational Sherri and the Macho King, Randy Savage. I think that was when he was doing the Macho King gimmick. But anyway, those two against Dusty Rhodes and Sapphire at WrestleMania 6, I want to say. It was WrestleMania 6 that year. And I love that match. I thought it was a very fun match. I love that WrestleMania. And so kind of branching off from that, we had two singles matches between the two sides, Sherri and Sapphire, and then later on we had Savage and Dusty Rhodes. This match never ultimately came to fruition. Sherri came out and she was ready to do battle. They played Dusty Rhodes' theme music twice, which Sapphire was coming out to at that period in time, obviously. She didn't come out. Sapphire won the match via forfeit, and that was it. So that the big story of this show, it was not a prominent match. Savage and Dusty Rhodes happened third to last in the card. But the biggest story of this show was whether, what happened to Sapphire, where'd she go, Where was she? Why she didn't come out for this matchup? Why she didn't come out for the Dusty Rhodes matchup? Would she be in his corner later on? What happened to Sapphire was the big story of the night. So it kind of kept viewers, hooked as to see, is she coming back? What happened to her? Why didn't she come out for this matchup? Kind of kept you invested for the rest of the night. So, it was what it was, and it was effectively, furthering people's suspense and interest in what happened to Sapphire throughout the remainder of the show. Up next, we had the Warlord taking on Tito Santana. A standard match. I really don't remember much about it. I don't remember it being bad, but it was good, but I just remember looking at the Warlord and thinking, this guy looks like Stone Cold Steve Austin. I don't know if they were always looking for someone of that build and just the Warlord didn't fit it from an in-ring standpoint or a mic standpoint or whatever. And Stone Cold just had it. I don't know. When looking at him on this show anyway, because I've seen the Warlord before, he didn't look like this. He looked like a bigger version of Stone Cold. I don't know why. It just appeared that way to me. But yeah, the match was okay. I like Tito Santana. The guy's an amazing athlete, one of the greatest, more underrated workers in my opinion in WWF history. But yeah, just on the whole, I don't know. I just don't remember much about the match. It was pretty forgettable. The Warlord won the match. And that was it. It was pretty much a standard singles match. Warlord won. Really nothing much else to say other than that. Up next, the WWF Tag Team titles. The Hart Foundation contending for the gold against Demolition in a 2 out of 3 falls match. And a very enjoyable contest, in my opinion. It could have gone longer. Again, that was pretty much the theme of the show. A lot of these matches got cut short. But, on the whole, though, I thought it was a very well-worked matchup. The Hart Foundation, or Demolition, won the first fall. Hart Foundation won the second fall via disqualification after Demolition broke up, I believe, one of the pin attempts or something. That was a weird way to call for the DQ, but it was what it was. We get to the third fall. Demolition is in control. Out come Legion of Doom. Now, I believe this is the one dream match, or not the only dream match, but among the few dream matches in WWE history, Demolition, which was always regarded as a Legion of Doom knockoff after Legion of Doom left the company a couple years earlier. Demolition versus Legion of Doom was the one match that never really came to be. Of course, they teased it on this show. I just don't think they ever had a match. Maybe on a house show circuit, but on a major stage. Maybe they were building to it at Survivor Series or at WrestleMania. I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure Demolition was gone from the company shortly thereafterwards, and the match got cut short, and maybe they put someone else in Demolition shoes. I forgot, I remember reading about it a while ago, but it was the one match that never really came to be, or at least to my knowledge. So it was a nice tease. For what it was a great way of building to that eventual rematch, or that eventual one-on-one contest, or two-on-two contest, I guess, between Demolition and Legion of Doom. And it also led to the Hart Foundation winning back the WWF Tag Team title. So a great moment for them, a huge title change, as well as building to, or furthering that feud between Demolition and Legion of Doom. So I thought it was successful on all fronts. Really enjoyed the matchup, loved the outcome, and loved what it would later lead to. Unfortunately, like I said before, though, it would not come to be. Up next, another singles match with Big Boss Man serving as the special guest referee. Jake Roberts taking on Bad News Brown. Again, good match, didn't really mind it. It was just kind of random, did not last long at all. Jake Roberts winning via disqualification after Bad News Brown got himself DQ'd. So kind of a weird way of, I don't know, it was a weird match. Again, it was okay for what it was, not a bad match. None of the matches on the show were necessarily bad before Hogan and Earthquake. I'll get to that in a couple minutes, but... And again, it never really felt like there was a personal issue between these two. They just kind of threw it on the card, only got a couple minutes, and that was it. The Big Boss Man didn't really do much as special guest referee. At one point, I'm thinking, is this a triple threat or something? He came out in his regular gear, not a t-shirt, not a special guest referee t-shirt. It was very weird. I know at this period in time they were trying to, put as many people in one match as they can, whether it be a manager or someone interfering, a special guest referee, someone in their corner, whatever. And that was just what this kind of felt like, just kind of, plopped right in the card. Disqualification finish, kind of a flat way of ending the match. Again, not really that memorable, not that bad, but just kind of forgettable, for lack of a better term. Up next, another tag team matchup. Nikolai Volkoff teaming with Jim Duggan to take on the Orient Express, which consisted of Pat Tanaka and Sato. I forget how it's pronounced, but Mr. Fuji in their corner. Fun match. Again, none of these matches lasted long at all. This one only went about 3.5 minutes. But, Nikolai Volkoff and Jim Duggan singing the Pledge of Allegiance, or America the Beautiful. They sang some patriotic song. Was weird to see, considering Nikolai Volkoff was like, always anti-U.S. and it was in the typical foreigner gimmick. And to see him singing in a patriotic song with Jim Duggan was felt very out of place. But it was fun to see. To me, it kind of felt like the old Santino Vladimir Kozlov pairing, more so Volkoff as Kozlov than Duggan as Santino. Jim Duggan was a very good talent, always entertaining. I thought Santino was more comedy than Duggan was. But Volkoff, to me, was like, he had that foreigner build, that foreigner push early on in his WWF career, turned into a patriot of the U.S., a pro-USA guy, much like Kozlov was, singing songs and doing the whole comedy shtick. It's weird, that's what it kind of felt like to me watching this match happen. They ended up winning the match. The people, they were over with the people, despite the oddball pairing of the two. They were over with the crowd, won the match. That was it, just kind of comedy filler. I enjoyed it for what it was. Not a great match at all, but for what it was, I enjoyed it. Now we get to our final three matches on the card. Randy Savage versus Dusty Rhodes. So this is where it all culminated. We had Mean Gene Okerlund backstage knocking on the locker room door of Sapphire saying, come on out, you're in there, we want to get the exclusive scoop. She didn't come out, and it was later during this matchup after Dusty Rhodes made his entrance that out comes the $1 Million Man. Now I forgot if they established this on the show. I had to go do some research, but it was before this match that Sapphire was receiving mysterious gifts from someone, kind of like Ted DiBiase and Maurice from a couple years ago when they had the $1 Million Championship and someone kept on sending in love letters like, I want you, I love you, whatever, to Maurice, when ultimately it was Goldust, which is weird. You had the $1 Million Man, Dusty Rhodes, Goldust, whatever, kind of a cool little tie-in there. But they weren't going for Maurice, they were going for the $1 Million Championship. On this show, it was the one receiving the gifts, or the one sending the gifts to Sapphire, was none other than the $1 Million Man, who ultimately bought out Sapphire. So that was the end of that relationship. Dusty Rhodes went on to lose this match after Queen Sherri helped Savage cheat to win. I think he hit Dusty Rhodes with her purse, and that helped him win the matchup. So Savage beating Dusty Rhodes in a 2-minute matchup. On paper, a match you would think it would be a lot better than it was. An instant classic, two of the greatest mic workers of all time, Dusty Rhodes and Randy Savage. Kind of a disappointment. I understand what they were going for. I understood why they did it. Sapphire was not the only reason why Rhodes was winning, but was kind of like she was kind of like the motivator behind Dusty Rhodes, a huge for moral support. She wasn't there anymore. He lost the match. I understood what they were going for. He went after her after the matchup. The limo took off. He got a very passionate and intense promo in the back. That was great to see. I mean, this is fresh off of Dusty Rhodes' death last week, so it kind of hits home to see him cutting all these great promos, and one of the greatest of all time. But still, the match was kind of disappointing. I was hoping for more of the match they were capable of having, but for what it was, I understood the angle they were going for. The whole Sapphire thing, apparently, from what I was reading before going into this matchup, was that Dusty Rhodes kind of felt like she wasn't necessary anymore to his act, so they ended up getting rid of her. She was very nice. They were a great act for while they lasted. The people were into them, but Dusty Rhodes felt she didn't really serve her purpose anymore. She didn't need her, so just get rid of her. McMahon said, no, we're not going to get rid of her, but they ended up splitting them up anyway. Sapphire was apparently, legitimately very distraught over being separated from Dusty Rhodes. She admired him, she really liked their pairing, and she didn't want to be separated from him. Ultimately, they were. She was put with Ted DiBiase for a few weeks before the whole angle was scrapped, and she ended up leaving the company later on that year, and I believe she passed away in 1996. So I feel like Sapphire does not get the credit she deserves. I'm not saying that she was essential and she was the only reason why Dusty Rhodes got over in WWE. He would have been over regardless, one of the greatest of all time. But I feel like that the act that they had going for that mini period of time for about 9 or 10 months from late 89 to the summer of 1990 was great. I thought they were a great, pairing together, very entertaining. They had that very fun matchup at WrestleMania 6 with Savage and Sherri coming to an end on the show, unfortunately, and it kind of kept you wondering what's next for Dusty Rhodes. Is he going to go break out on his own? Is he going to get revenge against Ted DiBiase? Classic swerve for WWE. I thought that was cool. But, the angle was shocking. I'm not saying I was a fan of it because I think the way they broke them up, I feel like it was too soon to break Dusty Rhodes away from Sapphire. It was a fun act. You didn't need to do it. But for what it was, though, it served its purpose in shocking the audience, serving as, giving that shock factor, and playing into his defeat against Randy Savage on this show. Up next, another singles match, Hulk Hogan taking on Earthquake. And this match was, pun intended, I guess, natural disaster is exactly what this thing was. Earthquake, I forgot what his real name was. I know he was in the Oddities for a while as well, I believe. The guy wasn't a good worker. Was not a good worker at all. I mean, he was decent, but to put him with Hulk Hogan, this was his grand return to WWE. He had his ribs crushed, of course, in storyline by Earthquake on an episode of Saturday Night's Main Event. Shortly after his loss to Ultimate Warrior at WrestleMania, he was contemplating retirement. Fans sent in letters to Hulk Hogan saying, don't retire, we need you, we love you, whatever. That's a that's a blast from the past. Sending in letters to a wrestler, not tweeting them, not even emailing them. Sending them a letter in the mail, which is pretty funny to think about, 25 years later. But still, Hulk Hogan comes on out, he returns, makes his grand return. The match was a lot longer than it needed to be, even with all the shenanigans from Jimmy Hart and Dino Bravo and Big Boss Man, all the interference from those guys. It kept the crowd entertained, which I guess means it was successful, but obviously, from an in-ring standpoint, the match was terrible. Both guys were very limited. That was very clear, hence why they had to go back to all those interference spots from Jimmy Hart and Dino Bravo and Big Boss Man. And the loss here to Earthquake, or the loss here from Earthquake to Hulk Hogan, kind of killed any momentum that he had going. I'm not saying he could have been a world champion or anything like that, but I guess Hogan would go on to defeat him multiple times throughout the remainder of 1990. So the push that they gave him throughout the summer of 90, throughout 1990, was not was only short-lived. It was only for a short period of time before they fed him to Hulk Hogan on this show. The match, terrible. I don't know. The people were entertained by it. I was not really all that entertained by it. It was very limited, very hard to watch. Hulk Hogan is not known for his in-ring skills, obviously, but all the interference kind of made it a little bit worthwhile, not so much. I would have rather, the biggest takeaway from this matchup is that I would have rather seen it go shorter. There was no reason for it to go 13 minutes. 13 minutes felt like such a long time for a match that really had, no substance whatsoever. I've never seen as long of a match without really anything getting accomplished. I know it's harsh to say, but I understood the angle they were going for. They wanted to defeat Earthquake to Hulk Hogan on his way back to the company. I get it, but it just didn't really do much for me. Like I said, the crowd was entertained, but not a great match at all. But that was about it. Then we get to the main event, the steel cage match for the WWF Championship. The Ultimate Warrior defending the gold against Rick Rude in a rematch from the year prior. This time not for the IC title, but this time for the WWE Championship. So the match, I liked the match from WrestleMania. Well, yeah, the WrestleMania match from the year prior, but also their SummerSlam match from a year prior as well. I thought both matches were good, not underrated. It's not like Ultimate Warrior had a lot of, instant classics during this WWE run, but I thought this match, he and I almost said Big Boss Man, him and Rick Rude, had a series of decent matches at WrestleMania, at SummerSlam the year prior. This match was good too, but for 10 minutes, really? I was watching the show on the network, and I saw that there were only like 10 minutes they had to work with, and that was it. They had a decent match, and Rick Rude almost attempted to climb over the cage. Ultimate Warrior stopped him. Kind of rushed match is what it felt like. Ultimately, Ultimate Warrior, no pun intended, ultimately, he climbed over the cage, retained the title, and the show went off the air about a minute later. So it was a very rushed match. It was good while it lasted. I'm a Warrior fan, so I kind of enjoyed it more than most probably, and other people probably would have thought it was shit. It was not the best wrestled match in the world, but I think their biggest, the thing that was working most against them was the time constraints. I don't know why they were given such a short period of time to work with, why one of the other matches could have been cut. A main event for the WWE title inside a steel cage, no less, was, is supposed to be a big deal. It should not be treated like an afterthought and given 10 minutes, less than the tag team title match or the Earthquake match and Hogan match, whatever. I understand they weren't going to go out there and work an instant classic, but it should have at least been treated like a big-time main event. And this was around the time they didn't have pay-per-views every month. They had a pay-per-view every other few months. And like I said, inside a steel cage, that had that big fight feel to it for the biggest blockbuster of the summer, and then they just kind of cut it short for 10 minutes. So I thought that was kind of disappointing. Still, again, I enjoyed it for what it was. They kept the belt on Warrior. I like the fact they put Rick Rude back in the championship picture, gave Rick Rude a nice little push for a while in the main event scene, although he would never ended up winning that WWE championship. Kind of going back to their feud from a year prior, so that was kind of cool to see the storyline continuity there, but the match itself was kind of a disappointment, if only because it ran so short, should have been treated like a bigger deal than it was. On the whole, not as good as the year before. I don't want to say the show was terrible. It had its moments, but throughout this review, you could probably hear me constantly saying disappointing and time getting cut short, which was basically the common theme throughout this entire pay-per-view. A lot of these matches should have gone quite a bit longer than what they did. The IC title match should have been longer, the main event especially. Hogan and Earthquake, I'm not saying you needed to cut it from the card. Hogan was, had his grand return on the show, the return of the Legion of Doom, like a lot of cool surprises, the 2 title changing hands, like that was cool and all, but the matches were disappointing to me. It was a noteworthy pay-per-view, it was a newsworthy pay-per-view, but the Hogan and Earthquake match should not have gone 13 minutes. Whose idea was that? I have no idea, or whose, bright idea that was, I have no idea. And I'd rather not know, but yeah, that was kind of a disappointment. Savage and Rhodes should have gone a lot longer. Again, I understand the angle they were going for, and maybe they had that classic match down the line. I don't know. But at SummerSlam, I was hoping for a lot more from those two. A very well-wrestled classic matchup, but we didn't get that. We just got a 2-minute kind of preview of what they could accomplish in the ring together, but still. That was that. The theme throughout the show, I liked following the whole Sapphire story. I did not know the direction it was going in until I looked it up afterwards and what happened beforehand and afterhand and afterward. A lot of these matches I can't always do research for, like what happened beforehand, what happened afterhand, because I just don't have the time to research every single matchup. But if they can succeed in getting me so invested in an angle or a storyline, a feud, or a match to the point where I'm looking up more about it and I want to watch more, I want to continue watching old pay-per-views so I can find out more about it, that's how you know it was successful. That's how you know it was a good storyline, if it keeps you intrigued and keeps you watching. So I thought that was a great angle, although I was not really all that satisfied with the payoff. It was a nice, intriguing angle throughout the show. Match of the show, if there's one match from the show I would recommend that you go out of your way to watch, would have to be the tag team title match. Got more time than any other match in the show, rightfully so. The main event was good, but far too short, but I thought that tag team title match was great. A lot of good wrestling. The 2 falls were well constructed. Even that match could have gone longer, but I digress. The title change was newsworthy. We had the first big tease for Legion of Doom versus Demolition. So I thought that was a true highlight of the show. Although, there were a couple other good matches as well. I enjoyed the IC title match, the main event to an extent, the fun tag team match between Volkoff and Duggan versus the Orient Express. Just a lot of those matches could have used more time. Even this match could have used more time, the tag team title match, but still enjoyed it for what it was, successful on all cylinders. And I thought this show, it was okay. Just in comparison to the year before, it was not as great. The matches could have been longer. Kind of disappointing, but still not a terrible show. So you can watch it if you want on the WWE Network. It's not a show I would strongly recommend that you go out of your way to see. The only match, like I mentioned, the only true match from this show you should go out of your way to see, if you haven't seen it already, would be that tag team title match between the Hart Foundation and Demolition. It's right in the halfway point of the show. I'm sure the network, little points will direct you to where you want to go. And that's going to do it. My full review of WWE SummerSlam 1990 as seen on the WWE Network. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. I appreciate your support. You can continue to support the show by finding me on Twitter and following me there at WrestleRant on Facebook. Like the page at facebook.com/graham.gsm.matthews. Visit the website at nextwrestling.net for my full written reviews of Raw, SmackDown, Main Event, Superstars, NXT, TNA Impact Wrestling, Lucha Underground, Ring of Honor, and everything else in between. We've got new content going up daily, so visit that website. And also, make sure to tune back here on Tuesday. And as I said in my last Tuesday video, my last SummerSlam review, WrestleRant videos, at least through SummerSlam or for the next 2 months, will be uploaded solely on Tuesdays and Saturdays, no longer on Sundays, for right now anyway. So, want to cut it back, and that's just the way it worked out. I just kind of did the math, like how many SummerSlam reviews I have to do, and I want to kind of culminate it on SummerSlam weekend, so that's just the way it worked out. So for right now, only WrestleRant videos on Tuesday and Saturdays, and that doesn't mean we won't have new videos going up on Sundays. Not WrestleRant oriented, but maybe old interviews, miscellaneous clips, all that other stuff. Maybe an interview tomorrow on Sunday, so kind of stay tuned for that, so you can get all the latest updates here on the channel by subscribing. You'll be updated, you'll be notified every single time a video is uploaded here to the channel. And again, like I said before, I appreciate your support. Have a great week, folks. I'll be back here on Tuesday for my full review of WWE SummerSlam 1991. Catch you guys then.